The land of Nyoka and the Serpent Sage. In the heart of a land kissed by sun and serenaded by the breeze, there lay a kingdom unlike any other, the kingdom of Nyoka. Hidden beyond emerald hills and wide golden plains, Nyoka thrived in a harmony so perfect, even the stars seemed to twinkle in tune with it. It was a land where rivers sang lullabies to the trees, and the soil was so fertile that mango trees bore fruit twice a season, just out of sheer joy. But this was no ordinary prosperity. It was born of a pact, ancient and powerful, one forged not with kings or armies, but with a serpent. Not just any serpent, mind you. A sage. A whisperer of truth. A creature of ancient knowledge known only as Kiboko, the serpent sage of the forest of whispers. Crown Queen Nia, the heart of Nyoka. Presiding over Nyoka was Queen Nia, a leader unlike the world had seen before. With eyes that held the calm of lakes and a voice as soothing as morning rain, she ruled not with an iron fist, but with open hands and an open heart. She wore no crown of gold, but rather one woven from the branches of the Mti War Maisha, the tree of life, a symbol of her bond with nature and her people. Her royal halls were not filled with jewels but with songs, stories, and the laughter of children. To the people of Nyoka, Nia was more than queen. She was king. She listened when they spoke. She walked through the village barefoot at times, laughing with farmers, dancing with weavers, and sharing roasted plantains with street children. And yet, behind all her wisdom and grace lay a secret partnership. One known only to a handful of elders and the winds themselves, her sacred alliance with Kiboko. Snake Kiboko, the serpent sage. Deep within the forest of whispers, hidden beneath towering mahogany trees and behind a veil of mist and moss, lived Kiboko. He was no monster, no cold terror. His body shimmered like liquid jade, and his eyes glowed with knowledge deeper than time. No one had seen Kiboko in generations, not fully. He spoke through the wind, his wisdom carried in breezes that rustled banana leaves and stirred the firelight in Nia's royal hut. Each night, Nia would sit by the sacred talking tree, a great baobab said to be Kiboko's chosen channel. There, the queen would close her eyes and listen, not with her ears, but with her spirit. Kiboko's voice was never loud. It came like a hush in the rustling grass, like the hush of a storyteller just before the best part. He spoke in riddles, never commands. But those riddles, they led to peaceful settlements, bountiful harvest, and justice that even the most stubborn elders respected. He was the whisperer of Nyoka's fortune. And Nia, she was the only one who truly heard him. Chief of rice harmony with the land. The people of Nyoka revered the forest as a living relative, not just a place to gather firewood or hunt, but a keeper of balance. They knew not to take more than they needed. They left gifts of honey and cornmeal at the forest edge. Children were taught songs that asked the trees for permission before picking fruit. There were festivals in honor of wind spirits, dances to celebrate rainwalkers, and even lullabies sung to thank the moon for guarding the night. It was a symphony of balance. And Nia was its conductor. But, as with every good story, and every ripe mango, there's always a bruise beneath the sweetness. Tornado entered TMU, the stirring storm. In the distant northern province of Nyoka, where the hills rolled a little rougher and the trees whispered darker secrets, there lived a man named TMU, Queen Nia's cousin. Well, distant cousin. They'd shared mangoes as children once, but life had carried them down very different rivers. TMU was a man of sharp words and sharper ambitions. While Nia sought harmony, TMU dreamed of control. While she listened to whispers, he desired shouts of power. He watched from afar as Nyoka prospered, and a seed of bitterness took root in his heart. The queen, he sneered one night to his advisor, a sly-eyed trickster named Montu. She plays games with the wind and they call it wisdom. Bah! There's something in that forest. Something she's hiding. Montu leaned in close, voice slick as oil. They say she speaks to a serpent. One older than fire itself. A beast that blesses her crops and curses her enemies. TMU's eyes gleamed. Then I will find the serpent. And I will claim what should be mine. Milky Way, the whisper before the storm. Back in the royal hut, Queen Nia sat beneath the talking tree. The wind curled around her shoulders like a scarf. Kiboko's voice came, softer than usual. There is a shadow among your blood. One who sees only what his hands can hold. Be watchful, Queen of Harmony, for a serpent's gift can heal or bite. Nia opened her eyes, troubled. The wind had never warned her so clearly. The poison ambition. The moon hung like a watchful eye over the kingdom of Nyoka, casting silver shadows on the land. Most were asleep, dreaming of full bellies and rain that came when called. But not TMU. He moved like a thief, cloaked in the silence of night, his heart thumping not from fear, but from the thrill of what he was about to do. Evergreen tree into the forbidden forest. The forest of whispers loomed before him, alive with sounds. Crickets clicked warnings, trees rustled secrets, and an owl blinked once, as if to say, turn back while you can, fool. TMU didn't flinch. He adjusted the charm tied around his neck, a crude talisman of power he'd bought from a desert merchant with more teeth than morals, and stepped into the thicket. The forest changed almost instantly. The air thickened. The temperature dropped. Time itself seemed to twist, each step forward felt like falling deeper into someone else's dream. Or nightmare. But TMU pressed on. He followed the faint sound of a hiss. Not threatening. Not loud. Just present. Like it had been waiting for him. Snake the confrontation. At the heart of the forest, beneath the roots of a great ancient tree that pulsed with its own light, he found Kiboko. The serpent sage. Kiboko lay coiled in silence, his body shimmering in shades of emerald and obsidian, eyes glowing like twin moons. He did not move. He did not blink. I know what you are, TMU said, breathless from wonder and ego. And I know what you've done for Nia. I've come to claim your power for myself. Kiboko's voice came not through lips, but from everywhere, in the rustling leaves, the shifting earth, the wind threading through the trees. Power given without wisdom is fire poured on dry grass. You will burn, TMU of Nyoka. But TMU only laughed. Then let me burn the world into something new. He stepped forward and held out his hand. Give me what you gave her. Kiboko's eyes narrowed. A quiet rumble echoed beneath the soil. She earned trust. You bring threat. But TMU was already moving. He lunged, not with a weapon, but with a small obsidian dagger enchanted to unveil truth, stolen from the temple reigns of a long-forgotten tribe. It sliced the air, and in a blink, he slashed at Kiboko's side. The serpent cried out, a sound that shook the trees and sent every bird in the forest flying. As Kiboko recoiled, one sacred scale, large as a human hand and glowing with a soft, pale blue light, fell from his body. TMU snatched it. The second he touched it, a pulse of energy surged through him, power, yes, but cold. Ancient. Alien. It entered him like lightning through water, and he grinned. Now we'll see who rules Nyoka, he whispered. And with that, he fled the forest. Cloud with rain, a kingdom unraveling. The forest wept. Literally. Rain poured for the next 3 days, not the soft, nourishing kind, but hard, violent storms that twisted trees and washed out paths. Animals once tame began acting strangely, goats refused to graze, birds stopped singing, and the royal cats hissed at shadows no one could see. The air grew heavy. Dreams grew strange. In the villages, children began waking in the middle of the night, screaming of a serpent bleeding in the dark. Farmers' hands blistered from touching the soil. Wells turned bitter. The people whispered that something was wrong with the world. But in his estate far from the capital, TMU celebrated. He stared at the scale, now housed in a golden box, though it glowed no more, and waited for his power to grow. Only, it didn't. In fact, it began to change. At first, he felt stronger, faster, smarter. Then the whispers started. Voices he couldn't shut out. They spoke in tongues, in riddles, in warnings. He stopped sleeping. His reflection in the water warped, his eyes flickering like fireflies. His skin itched constantly. He dreamed of forests swallowing him whole. Still, he told himself, power has a price. Crown the queen feels the shift. Far across the kingdom, Queen Nia stood once more beneath the talking tree. But there was no whisper. The wind was silent. The leaves did not move. Even the shadows seemed afraid. Her heart sank. Keboko, she whispered. Old friend, why do you hide your voice? She placed her hand on the trunk. It was cold. That night, her dreams were filled with falling leaves and a serpent bleeding silver into the soil. She awoke with a gasp and summoned her counsel. The balance is broken, she said. Something sacred has been taken. The council murmured in fear. Her top scout, a quiet woman named Molo, stepped forward. There were strange tracks at the edge of the forest. And near them, a talisman. Northern Province Make. Nia's eyes darkened. TMU. Balance scale the queen prepares. Nia knew she had to act, but not with rage. That was TMU's way. She would begin by listening, to the people, to the land, to the silence itself. She lit a ceremonial fire and prayed for guidance. Not from gods, but from the word itself. And in the smallest gust of wind, barely enough to flicker the flame, she heard it. He has taken. He will fall. But first, the forest must test your heart. She closed her eyes. The journey had begun. The trial of the heart. The wind had stopped whispering. The rivers no longer laughed. Even the birds held their breath. Queen Nia stood at the edge of the forest of whispers, no royal robe on her shoulders, no guards at her side. Just her staff of cedarwood, her satchel of roots and herbs, and the unshakable calm of a woman with purpose. To restore what has been broken, she said aloud, I must go where no crown can protect me. The villagers gathered behind her, their faces tense with hope and fear. A child offered her a necklace of cowrie shells for luck. An elder whispered an ancient blessing. And with that, Nia stepped into the wild, deciduous tree the forest knows. The moment she entered, the trees shifted. Branches curved above her like a cathedral. Vines curled away or toward her, it was hard to tell which. The path beneath her feet kept changing, forcing her to trust instinct over memory. This was no ordinary forest walk. This was a test, and the forest was watching. Dashing away the spirit of wind. The first spirit came at dusk. A sudden gust scattered the leaves into a swirling dance, forming a figure of air and light. It had no face, but it bowed with grace. Queen Nia, it whispered, voice soft as breeze on the skin. You seek harmony, yet you carry the burden of fear. Not for myself, she replied. For my people. For the forest. For what has been stolen. Then prove your trust in the unseen, said the wind spirit. Walk forward with eyes closed. Let the forest guide your steps. Nia hesitated, just for a breath. Then she shut her eyes and stepped forward. She walked blind through tangled roots and uneven ground, guided only by the rustle of leaves and the whisper of wind. Every step was a leap of faith. Every breath, a prayer. When she opened her eyes, she stood unharmed in a moonlit clearing. You have passed the trial of trust, said the wind, now fading. But trust is only the first step. Droplet the spirit of water. The next morning, she came to a stream, wide, rushing, and oddly warm. On the far bank stood a woman of shimmering blue, robes flowing like waterfalls. I am Moji, spirit of water, she said. Before you cross, you must give me something precious. I have little, said Nia. Only herbs, dried fruits, a song or two. I ask not for things, Moji replied. I ask for sacrifice. Nia sat at the edge of the water. She thought of her people, her comfort, her crown. Then she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small carved stone, the last gift her mother ever gave her. This, she said softly. This I have carried all my life. With trembling fingers, she placed it into the water. It sank instantly. The water parted. To heal the world, you must bleed a little, said Moji. You may pass. Fire the spirit of fire. By the third night, Nia was exhausted. Her feet were blistered. Her voice hoarse from whispering prayers to trees. And then came the fire. A ring of flame rose around her, not burning the forest, but trapping her. In the flames stood a tall figure, cloaked in red and orange, eyes glowing like embers. You seek Kiboko, it said. But will you face your own fire first? I have nothing to fear, Nia said. Oh no, the fire spirit crackled. Not fear. Anger. And suddenly, around her, visions bloomed in flame, TMU mocking her throne. Her people suffering. The serpent bleeding in silence. Her own voice crying out in frustration. Let your rage consume him, said fire. Strike back. Burn it all to ash. Her fist clenched. Her heart pounded. But then she whispered. If I burn the world to punish one man, I become him. The flames died down. You have passed the trial of the heart, said the spirit. Let your fire light others, not destroy. Snake TMU's curse deepens. Elsewhere, far from the forest grace, TMU was changing. His skin now shimmered faintly, unnaturally, and not in a good way. His eyes twitched. He hadn't slept in days, haunted by visions of serpents coiling through his veins. He clutched the sacred scale, but it no longer glowed. It hissed at him. Whispered things. Dark things. You took what was not given. You are not chosen. The balance will break you. He snapped at servants. Banished his advisors. Screamed at shadows. Even Montu, his trickster advisor, had fled, muttering that TMU was no longer man or noble, but something worse, a cursed soul with borrowed power. New Moon the serpent, found. Queen Nia reached the center of the forest as dawn broke. There, in a hollow surrounded by dying trees and still silence, lay Kiboko. He was coiled tightly, his scales dull, patches of light flickering in and out like a dying fire. Around him, the plants had withered. The sacred energy of the forest bled from him. She fell to her knees. Old friend, she whispered. I've come. Tell me how to fix this. Kiboko opened his eyes, slow, tired, ancient. You walked the paths. You bled for truth. You stood against fire without hate. Then help me stop TMU. The serpent exhaled, a breath that rustled the trees like wind returning home. The scale he stole cannot be taken back by force. Only by choice. He must surrender it, or be consumed. Nia's jaw tightened. Then I must make him choose. The return of the balance. The forest had changed. Where once the wind whispered riddles and trees hummed lullabies, there was silence. Stillness. Grief. Yet, somewhere in the quiet, hope stirred again, because Queen Nia had emerged from the trials, her spirit sharpened like obsidian. Beside her, Kiboko, the great serpent sage, lay weak but watching. He no longer glowed like before, but in his dim light, there remained a flicker of power yet unspent. What must I do to restore the balance? Nia asked him. Kiboko's eyes closed. His voice was little more than a ripple in her mind. He must return the scale, not by force, but by truth. He must surrender his desire for control. Only then can the forest breathe again. Nia bowed her head in thought. And then she stood. Then I must speak the one language TMU still listens to, his own story. Chief of rice disguised among her people. When Nia returned to Nyoka, she did not return in fanfare or parade. She wore no crown. No robes. No sigils. Just a faded cloak, a sack of herbs, and the name Marambi, which meant peace. She set up shop near the heart of the village marketplace, a modest wooden stall with bowls of powdered bark, dried roots, and common teas. People came to her with headaches, swollen ankles, even lovesickness. But her real medicine? Stories. She told tales with every herb she handed out. Not gossip, not flattery, but folk tales with fangs. Speaking head stories with teeth. One day, a woman came complaining of a bitter heart and restless dreams. Marambi offered her a pinch of moonflower and said, "Once there was a man who stole a stone from the belly of the earth, thinking it would make him a god. But every night, the stone whispered what he feared the most, the truth of himself." Another time, a merchant asked for a cure for greed. Marambi smiled. "Greed is a fever of the spirit," she said. "There once was a prince who drank from a serpent's cup. He gained power, but forgot who he was. The more he drank, the less human he became." And every day, TMU heard these stories. At first, he scoffed. "Old wives' riddles," he muttered. But each tale scratched at his mind like a thorn in silk. What if they know? What if the queen isn't dead? What if the serpent cursed me? He began pacing at night, unable to sleep. His servants reported he talked to mirrors. Laughed alone. Wept over the glowing scale as it pulsed like a dying heart. Brain the unraveling. By week's end, TMU was barely recognizable. His face, once proud and polished, was pale and sallow. The skin on his arms showed strange marks, not wounds, but faint scales, as if the serpent's magic was trying to reclaim him. He summoned Montu, the advisor who had once whispered poison into his ear, but Montu had fled. Everyone had. Even the guards kept their distance. He gripped the sacred scale in his hands, breathing heavily. "It's not working," he said aloud. "Why? Won't it work?" And then, as if summoned by the crumbling of his soul, Marambi appeared at his gates with a bundle of herbs and a voice like a memory. "I've come with medicine," she said gently, "but not the kind you can swallow." TMU stared. "You? I know that voice." Marambi entered without waiting for permission. She laid out 3 things on the table, a dried fig, a mirror, and a snake's shed skin. "Choose one," she said. "It will tell you who you really are." TMU, trembling, pointed to the mirror. He looked in, and what he saw was not his face, but a twisting, flickering serpent shadow, crying out from behind his eyes. He gasped. "It's me, isn't it?" he whispered. "I've become the monster. Snake the surrender." TMU fell to his knees. "Take it," he said, holding the sacred scale out like it burned him. "Take it from me, please. I don't want it anymore." Marambi, no, Nia, stepped forward and took the scale gently. It shimmered again for a moment, but then dimmed. Keboko's warning echoed in her heart. Returning the scale is only part. He must surrender the desire. She turned to TMU. "This isn't over." The scale was a symptom, not the sickness. "Then what do I do?" he cried. "I thought I could be more. I thought power would make me whole." She knelt beside him. "Then choose another path. Leave your title. Leave the hunger. And live not as a prince, but as a man who serves." TMU trembled. "Serve? As what?" Nia stood. "As a guardian of the forest. As one who listens instead of takes." There was a long silence. And then TMU, broken, weeping, humbled, nodded. Then let me begin. Ebb a spark of balance. That night, Nia walked into the heart of the forest again, the scale wrapped in silk. Keboko lay in his hollow, his breath shallow but steady. She placed the scale at his side. And though no words were spoken, the wind stirred. The trees swayed. And the first bird in weeks began to sing. A new beginning in old soil. The morning TMU left the palace. There were no drums, no farewells, no royal cloak flapping dramatically behind him. He wore a plain tunic, walked barefoot, and carried nothing but a satchel filled with seeds and a heart heavy with humility. He didn't look back. Instead, he walked toward the place where it had all begun, the forest of whispers. There, beneath the trees that had once shivered at his greed, he knelt at the edge of a great clearing. And in the silence, Keboko appeared, coiled and calm, glowing softly now, his strength slowly returning like dew at dawn. You return without demand, the serpent sage said, his voice now a low wind through the leaves. You kneel, not out of fear, but respect. TMU bowed deeply. I have nothing to offer but my hands. Then your hands shall serve the forest, said Keboko. Not as a prince. Not as a thief. But as a keeper of balance. From that day, TMU became something new, the watcher of the trees. He tended saplings. He mended broken paths. He listened to wind and birdsong and began to understand what they meant. No longer chasing greatness, he was now part of something far more powerful, stewardship. And the forest responded. Hibiscus, the bloom of balance. With Keboko's strength returning, the forest itself seemed to breathe again. Rivers that had thinned now danced joyfully through the valleys. The trees, oh, the trees, unfurled their leaves like arms opening in embrace. Vines bore fruit, herbs flourished, and the animals returned in peaceful droves, as if waking from a long nightmare. Back in Nyoka, Queen Nia stood beneath the talking tree, her eyes bright with tears as the wind whispered again. The balance has returned. The people felt it too. Fields turned green again. Wells ran sweet and deep. Nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of music and light. A festival was declared, not one of conquest or kings, but a celebration of restoration. They called it the Day of Return, a day where the people gave thanks not for what was gained, but for what was honored. Snake a bond etched in spirit. Nia and Keboko's connection deepened. No longer just queen and advisor, they became co-guardians of Nyoka's harmony, one rooted in the physical world, the other in the spiritual. They created a sacred grove at the edge of the forest, where future leaders of Nyoka would go not to learn politics or power, but to be taught by the land itself, to listen to wind, to understand water, to feel the fire of truth and the weight of silence. It became known as the Circle of Whispers, a place where wisdom grew from roots, not scrolls. Scroll, the story lives on. Years passed, and the tale of Nia, Keboko, and TMU became more than history, it became legend. Griots, the storytellers of Nyoka, sang it under moonlight, weaving rhythm into remembrance. Children mimicked Nia's walk into the forest during games. Carvings of Keboko adorned temples, not as a god, but as a guide. And TMU. His story was told not with shame, but as a lesson. Even those who lose their way can find the path, if they choose humility over pride. Every year on the Day of Return, people placed offerings of leaves, seeds, and songs beneath the talking tree, not asking for blessings, but giving thanks for balance. And though generations passed, and the names of kings and warriors faded, the legacy of the forest endured. Because the people of Nyoka never forgot. True wisdom does not come from what you conquer, but from what you protect.